If you've ever stared down at dry, lifeless soil and wondered what could possibly bring it back, you're not alone. Even after adding compost, mulch, or aged manure, some soil simply won't wake up. Plants barely grow, leaves turn pale, earthworms are nowhere in sight. The top layer might look decent, but below nothing's moving. I was in that exact spot 2 weeks ago, but then I buried something that changed everything. Now my soil is dark, damp, and full of movement. Seedlings that were stunted are suddenly pushing out vibrant green leaves. I peeled back the mulch layer yesterday and saw fungal threads knitting through the bed, and worms were feeding just inches from the surface. All I did was bury one charred material and one unexpected liquid, and I'm telling you, it didn't just improve the soil, it transformed it. So what did I use? Biochar, yes, but the real trick wasn't just the charcoal, it was what I soaked it in before burying it. Let's unpack the method, the science, and how you can replicate this in your own garden with almost no effort. Why biochar alone isn't enough, and what most gardeners miss. Most gardeners by now have heard about biochar. It's ancient, it's powerful. Indigenous Amazonian farmers used it to create the legendary terra preta, soils that still outperform even modern fertilizers today. Biochar works because it holds moisture, prevents nutrient leaching, and provides permanent shelter for beneficial microbes. But here's where people go wrong. Fresh biochar is extremely absorbent. If you put it into your soil raw, it can actually rob nutrients, especially nitrogen, from nearby plants. Instead of helping, it starts out as a nutrient vacuum. So how do you avoid this? You pre-charge it, and that's where the charred secret comes in. The secret ingredient? Fermented compost juice. Instead of just mixing my biochar with compost or worm tea, I fermented my own compost juice for 1 week. I gathered semi-finished compost, just starting to break down, and placed a few handfuls in a bucket of rainwater. I covered it loosely and stirred it once a day for 6 days, letting it bubble and steep. By the end, the water had turned murky brown, thick with microbes and the scent of healthy decay. That liquid became the life source for the biochar. I soaked my biochar in this fermented compost juice for 48 hours. The charcoal absorbed every drop, drawing in billions of microbes and nutrients. When I dug my trench and buried the mix beneath my raised bed, I wasn't just adding carbon, I was planting a living, breathing microbial battery. 2 weeks later, the results were undeniable. The first thing I noticed was moisture. In a bed that usually dried out by noon, the soil stayed cool and damp all day long. A few days after planting spinach and bush beans nearby, the sprouts broke through faster than usual, and stronger. The leaves were deeper green, the stems held more water. I didn't change anything else, no extra watering, no additional fertilizer. It was all coming from beneath. When I dug a test patch about a foot from the buried zone, I saw a huge uptick in soil texture. It crumbled, held shape, and smelled rich. Earthworms had moved in from the cooler edges of the bed. Fungal hyphae were bridging soil particles. In plain words, my soil had come back to life. And all of this happened with no tilling, no turning, and no machinery. Just the right pairing of natural ingredients. Why this combo works so well? It's not just about feeding plants, it's about feeding the life that feeds your plants. Fermented compost juice is rich in bacteria, protozoa, and soluble nutrients. When soaked into biochar, those organisms have a perfect habitat, a porous world where they can multiply safely and spread through the root zone over time. The biochar acts like a coral reef beneath your soil. It doesn't degrade like compost or wood chips. It stays put, capturing minerals and water during rainy periods and releasing them during dry spells. But once charged with living microbes from fermented juice, it stops being passive. It becomes a force multiplier. Roots grow deeper, soil stays looser, plants don't just survive, they begin to thrive without the roller coaster of feeding and drying cycles. How to recreate the method in your garden? Well, to try this in your own space, you don't need perfect compost or expensive inputs. Just start with whatever compost you've got. Kitchen scraps, shredded greens, garden waste, Steep it in water in a loosely covered bucket. Let it bubble for about a week, stirring once a day. And if you want to boost fermentation, you can toss in a spoonful of unsulfured molasses. In the meantime, go ahead and get some biochar, either homemade from charred wood or, store-bought if that's easier. Soak it in the fermented liquid for at least 24 hours, but honestly, 48 is even better if you have the time. After that, just bury it about 6 to 8 inches deep right beneath where you plan to plant. If you don't really want to dig up your existing beds, you can just make a compost core down the center or maybe along the side of the bed and pour the mixture in there. The results will still reach your plants thanks to root extension and microbial migration, so you're not missing out. The real reward here is a self-sustaining bed. Once you do this once, you'll realize something pretty powerful. Your soil actually starts taking care of itself. You'll find yourself watering less, fertilizing less, and even noticing that disease pressures may drop. And hey, you won't need to turn compost piles every week hoping for that black gold, because you'll have already planted it. And just like those ancient farmers who didn't have a garden center down the road, you'll be using what the earth already gave you. Biochar for structure, compost juice for life. Together, they make the perfect underground engine. So, here's some final thoughts and a gentle nudge. This is the kind of trick that doesn't just fix a problem, it actually teaches you something. It reminds us that great soil is built with intention, not just effort. You don't need to be busy to be effective. Sometimes doing less the right way yields more than doing more the wrong way. If this guide inspired you, helped you think differently, or gave your raised bed a second chance, don't forget to subscribe to Hydrohaven and share this video with a fellow gardener. There's a whole underground world waiting to wake up, and it starts with you.